Of course, NATO are meeting as we speak, so we just wanted to start with a little snapshot here of the the NATO members in blue, and just ask the question, what's probably top of the agenda in the discussions that they've been having over the last few hours?
So this is an emergency meeting to talk about Ukraine, and there are two important dimensions to this conversation. The most important in the longer term is how NATO now remobilises itself to deal with Russia under President Putin in a way that is the most significant change since the end of the Cold War in 1990. And the second thing they're going to do, just as important, is talk about NATO support to Ukraine in terms of more sanctions and military support.
On the topic of military support, if we just dive in a little bit closer, but still with the NATO neighbours clearly in shot, some announcements that have started to come out, some that are expected in terms of reinforcements?
Yes, so NATO is going to affirm today it's going to deploy 4 more battle groups. It has battle groups already deployed across NATO, one each to Slovakia, Hungary, Romania and Bulgaria, and they're a sign of NATO assurance and a signal that Article 5 remains inviolate.
And now let's dive in a little bit to get some perspectives of what's going on the ground in Ukraine. First of all, a focus dive on Kiev itself. And we have heard relatively encouraging stories of some successful counterattacks by Ukrainian forces in and around Kiev. Are those significant, General Sir Richard?
So they are significant, but they're very small scale. So we know of successful Ukrainian counterattacks, for example, in Irpin and Bucha, and also actually to the east of Kiev. And these are very small tactical actions, but they are indicative of the Russian forces are not breaking into Kiev, and indeed in many places are moving back a little and starting to build defensive positions. And that feels like another signal of this evolving stalemate.
Let's talk about that stalemate if we zoom out and look at all of Ukraine. We've been talking that these red-shaded areas, the land that Russia has seized, haven't changed drastically over the last week, the 4th week of this war. The stalemate, is that a very good thing for Ukraine, or does it give Russia time to refuel, both literally and metaphorically?
Well, both of those things are true, I think. I think the signs are right now that the Russian campaign in its current construction is not capable of taking much more ground, and we're beginning to see Russia dig in these defensive positions, which would indicate that it realises that. That does not mean that will be the outcome, because Russia is moving reinforcements from across Russia, both men and material, in order to unlock that stalemate. But we're seeing not much movement around Kiev. We're seeing the battle for Mariupol, which we imagine they will in the end break. We have not seen the significant movement towards Odessa that we were forecasting a week ago, but we couldn't rule it out. And we are concerned about Russian forces moving from the north and the south of the country once Mariupol is concluded, in order to try and circle the Ukrainian forces in the Donbass. But what this begins to feel like is a war confined to the east of Ukraine, except for continuing air and missile attacks in the west on the supply lines. But this is not the war Russia intended to have.